Mabuhay, everyone. This is Reverend Reg, and I'm here again, September 4, 2021. It's 9:51 a.m. here in Manila, Philippines, and I'm so grateful. I have with me someone who can share so much to us about overcoming grief or going through this process. As I have been hearing a lot of people as well who are trying to make the most out of healing themselves, especially with the passing on of their loved ones. It's very timely. And, it's so amazing because yesterday I saw her book posted on Facebook, and then I was so amazed because Marian Williamson, who's actually one of my favorite writers, wrote the foreword of her book. So I was really curious. And just to give you all a brief background of our guest today, Meghan Smith Brooks helps those impacted by grief, especially from the loss of a child, to experience healing in all ways that honor their loved one's life and allows them to find new meaning moving forward. Along with her husband and partner, Michael Brooks, Meghan is co founder and spiritual director of alternative ministry Unity Awakening Ways. Originally from the Northwest, she is an ordained Unity minister with over 25 years' experience as a spiritual educator, having served ministries in Kingston, Mesa, Arizona, Brea, and Pasadena, California, and Cincinnati, Ohio. She is a speaker, retreat facilitator, certified grief coach, and author of Unraveling Grief, a mother's spiritual journey of healing and discovery based on her personal grief journey after the murder of her 29-year-old son Justin in 2013, with a foreword by Marian Williamson. Using the formula from her book, she offers grief coaching and her Unraveling Grief to Thrive online course that has made a difference in the lives of many by guiding them through healing and transforming grief to ultimately discover how to thrive after loss and live with more meaningful intention. She has also produced two guided meditation CDs for healing and transformation. So without further ado, let's give Megan Smith a warm round of applause.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm really delighted to be with you today.
Yeah, likewise. And it's super amazing that you have this book because I know although your son passed on because of a different circumstance from what most parents are experiencing now, any loss of a loved one is something that really needs to be processed. And I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, absolutely. I mean, pain and loss is a part of our human experience, but it can be really heart-wrenching when it's somebody that you have an emotional connection with. And, what
Mhm.
we yearn for is their physical presence that, and we connect with people in with our senses. And so when somebody dies, it's permanent and we're grieving that we can't have anymore. So how do we move through that is what I realized. We need some support. We need some tools and practices that so that we can thrive. We don't have to let it destroy us.
Yes. And it's just amazing that you have this because honestly, for me, when my dad passed on, I was 15 years old
No.
and I didn't really know how to process it because apparently in my place, we don't really have tools like what you mentioned. So I didn't know how to go about it emotionally in terms of
Mhm.
processing it because
Mhm.
most of the time you're just rationalizing things
Mhm.
that you have to move on, life goes on. So you don't really give yourself permission to grieve properly if ever there's a proper way to do it.
Well, and there is no wrong way. And it is something I think we have to give ourselves permission, but we don't know we need to do that. And I think, from what I've grown up in our society in the United States, but it's probably could be a global thing, is that we tend to want to just sort of push it away. Let's get over it and get on back to our lives. But the thing is that when we've experienced that kind of loss of a loved one, it changes us at the core. So we can't be the same person anymore. And unless we realize that, our struggle is in trying to be who we thought we were when we're really not the same person. So who am I becoming is part of my healing process.
Yeah. And it's super amazing that you're talking about this because this concept of becoming, I realized after talking to so many people, a lot of people are actually oblivious to this
Mm.
because people look at their former experience as the only delightful thing to look into.
Well,
People are, yeah, go ahead,
well, I was
please.
just going to say, I mean, this whole COVID and pandemic thing that has affected the whole world. It's a global experience. We're all in this together. And how often do you hear the conversation about when it gets back to normal? And whatever
Ah,
normal is, like, there is no, we're not getting back to normal. Things have been changed. We can't put it back together in the same way. So it's the same thing that happens when we've experienced loss. We've experienced a form of loss, and the way of living has been changed. It's been taken out of our control. And if we don't have a foundation in place and a way to be flexible and adaptable to change, we're going to really be struggling with it and resisting it. And that intensifies our pain.
yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, Megan. And it's so important because apparently, like what you mentioned, this particular going back to normal
Mm.
is actually a challenge for a lot of people to break through, especially in terms of allowing oneself to go into the process but still welcome the concept of a new good unfolding in their lives.
Absolutely, because it's part of our evolution of being anyway, that we are constantly having to let go of what no longer serves us, what no longer fits in our lives, what no longer allows us to really express our wholeness, and invite in the new elements that can enhance our experience, that can prosper our reality. So it's a constant process, and if we don't realize that, um, then we're not allowing the greatest good to come through in our lives. And I think that the healing process of grief is one of the greatest teaching experiences that we could ever have, because it forces us to dive deep into that experience of embracing change and allowing something new to come out as a result of it.
Exactly. And apparently, this going through diving deep into the experience of it, it's just a place where most people don't want to go into
Oh,
for
absolutely.
some reason. I'm not sure if people are not going to tolerate the pain of going back into it, or just, I mean, temporarily, you're gonna have to go through it before you actually move forward, wherever forward may be. So
Hmm.
please explain it more, Megan.
Well, the truth is what I call it is that we have to feel to heal. And what you just said is that people tend to want to avoid that. Who wants to go into those dark and scary places? Who wants to really feel the intensity of pain? And yet, if we don't, we're going to procrastinate the ability for us to heal and move forward, to find some kind of meaningful life and thrive, despite the fact that we've had this heart-wrenching experience. So whatever form it comes in, is asking us to go to that deep and dark and scary place, so that we can learn something about ourselves that perhaps we would never have gone deep enough to discover otherwise. Ultimately, I think that's what the purpose is. So what I lead people through is to go as deep as you can into feeling the intensity of your pain, because from a spiritual perspective, as human beings, we want to reach for the good stuff, right? The joy, the bliss, the happiness. We think that's what we're supposed to be experiencing, but it's a vibrational intensity that we can be addicted to. Pain, on the other end of the spectrum, is the same intensity. So pain and loss, it is an equal vibrational thing, and we need it all to experience our wholeness. So if we're rejecting any part of it, we're rejecting a part of who we are, we're rejecting a part of life. So if we can go deep into that place, it's like in the old world maps. Do you ever see where they define the world as we know it, and they have all these monsters and scary things all around the outer edges? You're not supposed to go there. We we, we need to go there to explore, to get out of the boundaries of our self-imposed limitation. And so when we can go into the pain, I invite people to just like throw it all up. Just the messy, let the tears flow, let it like without restriction, let the energy out. And then we can
Yes.
shift it to beginning to recognize the value of the love that we're missing. If we did not have the capacity to love, we would not feel the pain. That in itself is a gift, is it not? So I can begin to shift into saying, oh, I have all these beautiful memories in my heart that no one can take from me. What a beautiful gift that is, that I can bring a smile back to my face to remember and recall that whenever I'm feeling sad. So that's a simplified, exercise that I can recognize the value of. There is something that has been given me that no one can take from me because I love so much. Would you want to have the pain taken away but never have had the love that you mourn?
Yeah, exactly.
So the pain is a reminder that I've had this beautiful gift of the capacity to love. And I can begin to value that as the beginning of moving forward, um, to learn to live with this, knowing that there's going to be triggers along the way. But the love that I hold, I don't think that the person that I'm missing would want me to stop living, right? I mean, they
Yes.
would want us to move forward. So, I always say to people, it's like, okay, so let's start at the beginning. How are you breathing? We
Wow.
have to sometimes remember to learn
Mhm.
how to breathe again, like that deep belly breath that babies do so well, instead of the shallow breath that sometimes happen when we're traumatized, so that our body isn't getting the oxygen that it needs. It's back to our wholeness. What does my body need to get through this? Well, start by breathing again.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Megan. It's such a beautiful thing that you're talking about now, especially you talked about this breathing thing. And right now, even something as simple as that one is something that a lot of us, we fail to recognize that we have to do it on a conscious level.
Hmm.
Especially so many things are taking our attention away from things that's truly essential in life. And please tell us more about how we can enhance that breathing practice consciously.
Well, actually, in my book, I have 4 links that are guided meditations for the healing process. And the first one I start with is breathing, so that you're just like remembering that I breathe in deeply and exhale fully. You just do that and you can just feel that release. So I'm letting that natural process of, just think about it. If I wasn't breathing, I wouldn't be alive. So that very breath is reminding me that I am divine by nature, and that breath is what animates me.
Ah,
So I want to expand it to animate myself as much as I can so that I get all that I need, especially when I'm in the process of healing, whether it's, a physical, mental, emotional process. It's
yes, and it's
critically
such
important.
beautiful. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that, especially talked about the mental and emotional component because right now, even for a lot of my viewers, they still question the validity of the mental and emotional aspect because apparently it's something that you can't see. And a
Mm.
lot of people are still just aware about the physical aspect. And I think that's where unconsciously people take their mental and emotional health for granted because you can't touch it. So, how do you begin to explain to someone who's a total beginner to understanding the mental and emotional aspect of one's life?
Well, when I go back to grief, when I started to explore grief, I realized that it is fundamentally a very critical piece of our growing and evolving as human beings, and to getting to know that we are divine by nature. And so when I sat and thought about what does grief really mean and how does it impact us and why is it we struggle with it, I had this revelation. If you don't mind, I'm going to read this piece from my book.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Um, what I discovered is my experience is that grief slowly creeps into every part of us. It infiltrates our thoughts and feelings. It seeps into our emotions and it crawls into our hearts. It finds its way into the cells of our body and it takes over how it functions. It finds its way into every aspect of our lives, our relationships, how we respond to the world around us, our behaviors, our perception of life on every level. And in time, we can't even recognize ourselves as grief has taken up residence in who we are. So I decided my only option is to make friends with grief. Since we're going to be hanging out so much together, literally the rest of our lives, it's a lifetime relationship, whether we like it or not. So hence, it's a good idea to take steps to get to know our new friend and who seems to be influencing so much of who we are. And the thing is that we all carry with us unresolved grief from
Mhm.
from early stages of life when we didn't even know. It's like the little small things maybe. Um, and if we haven't resolved them, it's affecting us, and then it adds on to the big stuff when it happens. So
Exactly.
if we don't start processing it now, then we're just adding on more layers of pain and suffering that we don't realize we really have some control over processing.
Amazing. And here's a question from Dr. Rogisman, who's watching all the way from the Philippines too.
Ah,
Hello, how important is breath work?
critical. It's like hold your breath and see what happens, right? So,
Yeah,
so if you watch a baby, their little bellies go up and down. They're breathing full belly breaths, not the shallow. So using the diaphragm. I'm a singer too, so I learned that early on taking voice lessons. So you want to breathe in deeply through your nose and expand into the belly. You know, don't worry about it sticking out. So take it all in and just hold it for a second so you can feel that it's activating your cells and then release
yeah,
it fully. It's like
awesome.
if you do it with some energy, you actually feel the energy of like, and consciously think as I exhale, I am releasing anything and everything that no longer supports my health and wholeness. It's been useful, but thank you very much. I need you no longer. Goodbye.
Wow,
That
amazing,
in itself can begin to shift your energy and begin the healing process.
amazing. Thank you so much for that. It's something that I'd like to practice on myself too. So anyway, this is Dr. Rogesman. She has another comment. I know there is science behind it. She's referring to breath work because
Hmm.
ancient people didn't have the capacity to speak. They solely relied on the power of other forms of language like sign language, breath work, and the power of sound.
Mm.
So uh,
Well,
that's yeah,
and the power of sound is because sound is vibration. You see, think from a spiritual place, we are vibration. It's energy. Everything energy has a um, vibrational level. And so sound is powerful because we are aligning with a vibration, which can release energy, but also consciously we can think about the vibrational level that we want to get back to in our wholeness is a higher frequency. So when we are out of balance with our body, whether it's mind, body, or spirit, um, we are vibrationally out of sync. So our breath work can begin to bring that balance back to sync, but we also want to align our thoughts with that intentionally. So that's where the powerful vibrational practice of toning um, or saying a mantra can be really
wow,
powerful. Yeah. So, if you take in a deep breath and then you release it with a sound, you are intensifying the vibration. So it's
Wow. You know, that sounded just like my singing bowl.
well,
Wow, it's but you're
can
able
you
to do it.
well, can you feel the energy from your bowl? It's like feel that
Yeah.
energy, and just like breathe it in. I have a quartz bowl that's one that aligns with the vibration of the heart chakra.
Hmm.
And if you just lean and feel the vibrational energy, you feel your body start to tingle. So,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I am realigning myself. That's the beginning of healing. So if we're not doing that, and so that the other thing that I talk about in my book is self-care is critical when we're healing, no matter what it is, because what I eat, what I think, what I say, what I expose myself to is vibrational energy. And it's going to either support or it's going to continue to throw me out of balance. So what I eat, food is vibrational energy, right? So when I'm healing, if I'm turning to addictive substances or eating junk food, a lot of sugar, it's not
Hmm.
giving my body the vibrational energy it needs. So healthy whole foods aligns my body with what it needs. It's like I'm taking care of myself like I'm my own mother.
Yeah.
What would your mom do? She'd make you chicken soup or something, that's out of fresh whole food to support and nurture you.
Yes.
So we need to be our own self-care mother when we're healing.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. They're very practical advice and something that we can actually immediately start taking action on.
Hmm.
And here's an additional comment from Dr. Ro. Wow, because you have just validated what one of my mentors shared with me before we proceed to meditation proper. You have to do this breath work before starting the meditation to pull stuck trauma and emotions out of the body.
Yes, because they stay stuck and we wonder why we feeling off or it can be the beginning of some physical ailment. Um, you know, any of those things are symptoms that something's out of balance. So that's why I began grief healing work with breathing. We have to begin to breathe to get that energy moving. It helps us to be aware of our thoughts and feelings, and we can focus in on then beginning to listen. So the next meditation I have in the book is about listening to your inner voice. It will tell you what you need.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Megan. And what about me? Because I really love exercise. And of course, when you do strength and resistance training, your breath seems to be deeper than usual.
Hmm.
So, does that help too? Would that count for the kind of breathing that you're encouraging us to practice daily?
Oh, absolutely. Because when we're breathing deeper, then we're able to go deeper within, which is where our inner guidance comes from, so that we have a capacity to listen with our whole body, not just our ears, but it's like really you're tapping into feeling. Because I think that when we're traumatized, when we're in pain, we try to avoid feeling.
Yes.
And that is exactly what we need to not do. And maybe initially, when we're really vulnerable. I remember when I first found out that my son had died. I didn't know he was murdered yet. I was actually had been traveling across country all day. I had my cell phone off. I was getting ready to join colleagues for a ministers' conference at sea. It was going to be a cruise out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I arrived at baggage claim, turned on my phone, and my older son called me and said, "Mom, are you sitting down?" And that's never good news. So, it's just like, what, what? And he said, "Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but Justin's body was found in the river and we don't know what happened to him. He's gone." And it was like this tsunami just slammed into my body and I was knocked out of it for months because it was a shock. It was more than my mind could comprehend. And you initially reject it. It's like, no, I didn't hear that. That can't be. I just talked to him a few days ago. That can't be true. And so we go through this process of not wanting to accept. So we're denying it because it's too much to take on. And so as in hindsight, I look, it's like I was just going through the motions of getting through my day without really being in my body. So,
Mm-hmm.
it takes time to begin the process. You can't just jump from like, oh, by tomorrow, I'm just going to start feeling really deeply and by golly, I'm going to be healing. No, that's why we be gentle with ourselves, and listen to what I need. I take care of myself and love myself and surround myself with those that will be good listeners and good supporters, not trying to fix me. And so I noticed as I was in this numb state, I think that it is divinely by design
Mm-hmm.
for us so that we don't have to take the full impact of the pain on all at once. It's too much.
Yeah.
Once that numbness starts to wear off, though, the intensity of the pain could be more painful. Um, but we're more prepared to handle it then. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we can start to really do the work. And if we recognize the value in acknowledging the pain, we can begin the healing process. Avoiding it, I talk about in my book, it's like you can't crawl under it, you can't tiptoe around it, you can't go over it, you have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready, when you're
Amazing.
ready, it will wait for you.
Thank you for sharing that. Megan, I haven't really experienced that space where I was able to really cry about my dad's passing on.
Um,
uh, Maybe things have, although it's been like I'm 36 now, so yeah, that's 20 years that I wasn't really able to cry about it. Things just happened so fast, and I haven't really processed everything. But in my most challenging times, especially in my adult life, I just talk to my dad
mhm.
conversationally. I don't know if that's part of your process, but so far, that's the
Mhm.
way I've dealt with it, and I trust that it's something that is working out fine. But now you're telling me that when you're ready, you have to go through it. But I haven't really experienced that space yet.
I
So,
imagine that there's a part of you that is still waiting, that needs processing. And there's such a value in tears. I talked to somebody actually just the other day. I was doing a workshop and they said they hadn't been able to cry after the loss of their partner of 50 years or something. And I just think sometimes there's maybe a part of us that feels like I'm stronger if I just hold it back. That tears could be a sign of weakness. We may have picked up that message somewhere. And this person said that she was finally able to start crying when she lost her cat because
mm,
it triggered some kind of emotion that was more on the surface that she was finally able to release, because tears are a release from our body. That's why we have them. And if we can, instead of trying to hold it back and grabbing the Kleenex and, it's like, I'm like, no, let it flow without restriction. A really messy cry, like let it get all over you. Um, because otherwise it's going to get bottled up. Another way you can work it out. I'm a big walker. I do walking meditations. It's like you can work out the energy. Also, it's how I can process things. So only what really works for you. But it's how do I get that energy moving? And so for you, even after it's been this much time, you can go in and say, is there any part of me that's still grieving or that I've held back that I'm ready to release now, and see what
mhm,
happens. But I would actually absolutely say talking to your dad is a powerful process in knowing that the soul energy of the person that you lost, that you mourn, is still alive in spirit. I talk to my son all the time. His presence was with me I know while I was writing this book, my favorite picture, the last picture of us together is like right there. I have it in the inside my book. I'll show you the picture. My
Wow,
beautiful handsome boy.
amazing,
Yep.
amazing.
And so the thing is that it's just our relationship has changed form, but there's still a connection. Your dad, my son, are no longer restricted by this physical bodysuit.
Amazing.
So they're free now.
I got goosebumps when you said that uh, that their relationship just changed form. My
Hmm.
my hair stood up because yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And the first guest that I had on my show was Stephen Simon. He made the movie What Dreams May Come, and then he wrote the book What Dreams Have Come when his wife passed on, and he was
Uh,
saying the same thing,
hmm.
that he can still feel the presence of his wife, and literally he can sense that his conversations between him and his wife is still ongoing even after his wife passed on. So
Hmm.
all the more I feel that all these things that me and my conversations with my dad and what he's saying, it's really something that we have to learn how to process better. And maybe it really is something to explore because apparently the three of us, we don't even know each other, you know, closely, but uh, for some reason, we're all connecting with each other in this
Hmm.
time and space.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where, you know, I guide people into this place where you can bring his presence into your within you in your sacred space within, and have a conversation. Just be open to, sometimes it's, it comes to us in our feelings that maybe it isn't like actual words, but there's a sense of knowing. And so we don't have to feel like, oh, I didn't get to have the conversation I wanted to. We can still go within and connect. It's just a different way. And so we have to let go of our human need to have it in the physical presence where we're engaging our senses that we're used to experiencing things through. If I can let go of that and let that wall be cleansed and opened up, then I can really get a sense. That's why I start with breathing and then I move to listening. It's a practice so that I can begin to experience the fullness of life more. Then I can go
Amazing.
to feel, to heal, and then ultimately it's shifting into a sense of gratitude. Because gratitude, I think, is a part of who we are. It opens the world up to us. It opens the flow of energy. And that even in the midst of pain and loss and grief, I can find something to be grateful for that will open that door to healing. If it's in the very essence of it is my capacity to love. I can be grateful that I have the capacity to love. It might bring pain, but there's value in that.
And I think it's one of those things that's camouflaged into, a loving or delightful blessing that we get because it's not easy to say that grieving is a blessing. Especially, it's very painful.
Well, yeah, it's a conflict, in our logical thinking. And yet, I can find blessings within my sadness that can help
Amazing.
me with my healing
Amazing.
process.
Beautiful thing that you're sharing, Megan. So,
Mm.
this particular thing that being able to see the blessing from your sadness, please expand on it because I know that other people would like to be able to have that awareness or even have the willpower to
Mm-hmm.
actually apply something productive that can help their minds,
Mm-hmm.
their emotions as well to process it better. Aside from reading that you've mentioned and these conversations with our loved ones that have passed on, is
Mm-hmm.
there anything else that you would like to add for people to practice?
Well, after we've gone through the initial painful time, and where we're really vulnerable and we're ready to begin to move forward, one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves is to look at the person that I'm missing the most, the one that I'm mourning, the one that is now changed relationships with me, and say, what is it that I admired about them, that I really just love, and that something of value that I recognize of them. That is a gift that they offer us as a legacy of their life. And so when I can begin to see that, it's like, if that's something I admire about them, is that something that I could perhaps find useful to integrate into who I am? Because that's a way that I can keep their memory alive by honoring them and how I live moving forward. So it begins to shift our perspective on how we perceive life in general. You begin to evaluate, how am I living? Am I honoring the love that I miss? And am I honoring myself? And recognize that I'm creating an imprint in the world around me that literally becomes my own living legacy that I leave then for those that come behind me. And it begins to change how we view life in general. And that ultimately is an extraordinary gift.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you so much, Megan. Especially you talked about shifting perspective. And because I think you also have to allow yourself that thorough process of grieving before you're able to shift, like what you're encouraging us to do, which isn't
Hmm.
just to just move on from it and rationalize that you have things to do to move forward. So it's amazing that there really is an order to these things. And I'm happy that you wrote this book because at least people will have a how to
Yes.
about it. It's so important, and I'm glad that you generously shared it with me and the rest of the viewers. And please tell us more about Marian Williamson writing the foreword of your book, because I'm very sure that a lot of people, just like me, they're very curious as well, as you caught her attention with the amazing content that you wrote.
Well, as a minister, I've in the New Thought movement, I've crossed paths with her, and so I'm very grateful for that. She served one of the Unity ministries in the Detroit, Michigan area years ago. And my husband and I, our last ministry, we stepped down, and now we're creating more of an alternative ministry because realize there's a virtual connection on a global basis, and we really want to support people with their spiritual education and the different ways we can do that. But Marianne Williamson, we had as a guest speaker at our church, so I got to know her, and I started to share with her. My son had already passed at that point, that I really had this calling to write a book, and she encouraged me to do that. So when I was complete, I reached out to her and asked if she'd be willing to consider writing the forward, and she did. She said, I don't really do that anymore, but I feel like the topic is so important to get out in the conversation of the world that she was willing to do that. It's actually a fairly short but powerful forward. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please go ahead.
She says, what you're about to read is a very big book, not big in its amount of words or in the size of the physical product. It's big as in the number of worlds that it traverses. It contains a multitude of dimensions that form the contours of a broken heart. Meghan Smith Brooks experienced the greatest catastrophe that can befall a human being, having lived through her son Justin's murder. She made the Herculean effort to process her grief in the deepest way possible, and she succeeded. She succeeded in much, in fact, that she not only survived, she thrived. And she has turned her grief into an extraordinary soul medicine for those whose hearts are breaking as hers has. I felt tremendous admiration for Meghan as I read the book. How one could find forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude after what she went through is almost unbelievable. Yet in reading the book, you can tell that she did. She is raw, she is honest, and she is so intent on aligning with her will with the will of God, even in the most painful places, that she has become a powerful healer of those whose tears she understands so well. If you are one of those people, I'm glad you found Meghan. And I'm also glad you found Justin. Touches my heart. For he shines through these pages as much as does his mother, illuminating the greatest mystery of all, that even in death there are the seeds of new life. You could not have found a better guide to lead you through the hour of your agony. Megan is someone who has been there. She is someone who has found her way through, and in reading this book, I know that you will too. May all hearts be healed. Marianne Williamson.
Wow, awesome. And I just want to give you a round of applause for it. It's you and Justin and your husband, because I'm sure he was very instrumental as well in helping you process it. Wow, it's so beautiful.
Absolutely.
And thank you for writing it, because recently I was supposed to facilitate a funeral blessing for a family
Oh,
and help them declare completion on the passing on of their loved ones' life. And especially for ministers like you and me,
mhm,
we have to assist in dealing with this kind of the evolution of the soul and the completion of the soul's purpose in
mhm,
this lifetime.
mhm,
So it's powerful and it's amazing. And the thing I love about New Thought and Unity is that there's already a process that's been done for decades that actually helps people go through it with ease and grace. And
mhm.
it's so important because I know for myself in the past, I did not have that kind of orientation about the continuity of the soul.
Mhm.
And can you please share more about it?
Well, personally, I feel very honored when I'm invited to facilitate the service for someone that has passed. I think that we do such a focused job of celebrating a birth, and it's like there's this excitement of welcoming a new soul to the planet, but it's an equal celebration. We can, you said with grace, it's like honor a soul and their transition from releasing this body and continuing their soul's journey. And how do we facilitate helping those that are left behind move forward in that way? And so I think it's really what I learned is like I looked at my son's life. I wrote about his legacy is how did he live his life? What did he leave behind? And so that memorial service, that funeral service, they're very important because it's the beginning of finding a way moving forward and honoring the person that we love that will always have a place in my heart. Um, and beginning to, as I've mentioned, come into understanding our new relationship. Though there's a resistance to it, if we can begin to embrace it, we begin to experience the gifts of it, um, and just it's like I can just close my eyes and remember my son and his beautiful eyes and looking into them and his joyful laughter. It was contagious, and he lived life on the edge. Maybe there's a part of him that knew he was going to have to pack a lot into his 29 years. And so that's one of the things I learned from him is maybe I was limiting my life, being a little too safe. And so, could I expand the boundaries of how I live to be a little more courageous, a little more brave, to explore things? It's like if I have an opportunity, then I'm just going to follow it through. If it doesn't work out, fine. I learned something in the process. Thank you, Justin, for pushing me off the edge and helping me to discover more about myself. Those are the things we can begin to celebrate. The shared stories, such a powerful process that we can enter into, um, when we can get back to laughter.
Yes.
you know what are the things that so that we could, because that's the fullness of life. The somberness is not where we're supposed to stay. It has a purpose. I have to experience it. It's like, yes, I'm feeling sad now, um, but I need to begin to breathe and to live again. How can I live with this new element that's taking up residence, a part of who I am, and be okay with that?
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Megan. Especially you talked about the fullness of life, the joy of life, and the laughter of your son, and all those things. We know that at the moment, personally for me, I would like to have more of those, especially
Mhm.
right now. Before we had this conversation, I was just chatting with a friend of mine who's a nurse in Texas. And one of the things that you were talking about, all these things that the passing on of so many people, that it wasn't really foreseen. And for them, it's taking a toll, not just for families as well, but somehow if you're that health worker who gets to see
Mhm.
all these people passing on with the global transition, and
Mhm.
we're all trying to navigate our way into this matter as graciously as possible, and some without grace, more with
Oh,
anger
every
and
well,
yeah.
every time I hear, the media, of course, there's so much going on, but every time
Mhm.
I hear of another heartbreaking story of a family that's beginning their grief journey, of having to let go of a loved one, and the painful, intensity of so many people had to, their loved one died without them, being with them, that they were alone. I was with somebody last weekend, a woman who lost her husband of 54 years that had COVID, and she wasn't able to be with him the last 2 weeks of his life. And I just can't imagine how painful that must have been. And so we have to let go of the guilt that we feel around not having control of, or I should have done this, or I should have done that, or, the stories we tell ourselves. It doesn't serve a purpose. So it's like going back to, what did I have control over, and what can I do now? So it's how I choose to move forward makes the difference. But I know that the healthcare workers that are exposed to that on a daily basis is taking a toll on them. I mean, how much
Yeah,
sorrow can you tolerate?
exactly. And imagine it becomes something that you think is just a normal. I mean, of course, as
Mm,
ministers, everybody has
mm,
got to complete their soul's purpose, but seeing it on a
mm,
daily basis is very different compared to both of us just talking about it through video conference. So, what
mhm.
advice, Megan, do you think would be best for healthcare workers about being exposed to that sorrow of family members around them? Because even if they're not seeing them face to face, just the fact that someone's, messaging you about what they're going through,
Mhm.
if
Well, it impacts us even when we don't have a close personal relationship. I know the power of being with someone at the moment they take their last breath, and being able to honor that transition, but to do it over and over and over again in such tragic ways. Whether you're a healthcare worker or anybody, we have to have a practice of self-care.
mm,
How do I process, my days, my life, the things that are difficult? And am I giving myself permission to step away from it and finding some form of renewal? So what does it work for you? Well, breathing, meditation, taking time to reconnect with the power within me, is a renewal process. For me, it's engaging, going walking in nature, getting the energy of moving my body and breathing deeply, or getting in a pool. When my son died, I was living in Pasadena, California at the time, and I was grateful that I was renting this adorable little cottage, on this estate kind of in the backyard, that was really private and had a 40-foot pool and a hot tub. And I spent so much time in that water, was very healing and renewing for me. So then I could get up and do the things I had to do, that I was responsible for in my life. So I learned to compartmentalize in a way, so that I would say, okay, I have to do this now, and then I'm going to schedule time for me to process, to renew, um, to heal. And sometimes that's what we have to do. We just have to put it on the calendar. This is for me time, so that I can manage the other parts of my day.
amazing. Thank you so much for that, Megan.
Mhm.
It's such a powerful thing that you shared with us. And here in the show, we always encourage all our viewers to pick a perspective that they got from the thought leader and immediately apply it in their lives. And I know you've shared a lot already, but is there one thing that's a standout for you that I can apply and the rest of the viewers can apply immediately? Especially, like you mentioned earlier, even if you're just someone who's just hearing a person grieve because apparently someone passed on, what can we do about it? Uh, what's the number one top of mind you want me and the rest of the viewers to apply?
Mm. We need to have compassion for each other. What we're all going through stuff, and whatever form it comes in. And so I think one of the most important things is, do I love myself? Am I loving myself through whatever life um, challenges me with? Because when I can love myself, I'm going to have the better capacity to care for myself. And I'm not going to be able to manage anything if I'm not doing that. So, um, loving ourselves first and foremost so that I can prioritize my needs, because if I'm depleting myself by giving it away to everyone else, I'm not going to be good for anybody for very long. And healing from especially something that's traumatic, it takes a lot of energy. So it fatigues us. So be gentle with yourself, love yourself through it, one breath at a time, one step at a time. It's the beginning of no matter what's challenging our lives.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Megan. I had such a fantastic time with you. And I just want to ask if people want to work with you or they want to get a copy of your book, where can they go?
The book is available on Amazon.com in any country, in paperback and in the Kindle form. I have recorded an audio version. It's in editing, and I'm hoping it will be released soon as well. If you would like to contact me about grief coaching, or I have an online course that's self-paced, and I do bi-monthly Q&As, and so it's 8 modules you can do it in 8 weeks or 8 months or however long works for you. You can reach me at unravelingsgrief@gmail.com, and I will share information with you. I also have a website that's Unraveling Grief is all you need to remember, but it's www.unravelinggrief.com.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Megan. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
flash those on the screen so people can copy it and they can visit the website immediately. And I'm sure there will be a lot of people who will need your coaching, and I'm sure it will provide the space for them to heal themselves with your facilitation.
Thank you. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is to reach out and ask for help, to know that we can't always do it alone. And have compassion for everybody that's going through whatever it is, because we don't always show up as our best self. Um,
Mm.
None of us are perfect. As are we walking on water yet? I don't think so. So,
Yes, that's an amazing way to put it. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Dr. Rogusman, for listening. And also, Nella Steele, thank you for tuning in. And, it's such a powerful, transformative thing when you're able to talk to someone who can actually help you go through that painful and difficult time in your life. And I'm so grateful because there aren't a lot of grief counselors that I encounter. So I'm very glad
mm,
that Megan is here. And Megan, you just made me very curious because I don't hear a lot of new thought teachers say, ask for help.
mm,
I can only count in my fingers teachers in New Thought who say ask for help. But last year, I began learning how to ask for help because one of the spiritual teachers I met taught me that asking for help is just as spiritual as being self sufficient. And please talk
mm.
more about it because I think right now, being compassionate, connecting to others is really very important to maintain the state of your mental and emotional well being.
Well, it is, because we're not always functioning at our highest and best. And we can't possibly have absorbed everything we need to know in the world. to deal with everything that's available. So reach out and gift yourself with an investment of yourself to find somebody that can help walk you through a process to experience more meaning and to thrive in life, because that's what we're meant to do. So everything's a learning opportunity. We are constantly, we're creative by nature, which means that we're evolving. We're not meant to stay the same. And so when something happens in our life, it's happening so that we can discover something new about ourselves, and we may not be able to see it by ourselves.
Thank you
You
so
have,
much.
and one other thing it's important is that reaching out for help, it's most important that you also recognize that you're asking for the help to do the work for yourself. I can be a guide, I can support you, but I can't fix it for you. So you have to be willing to do the work with that resource to make the difference.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Megan. It's such a
Mhm.
powerful thing that you shared with me and the rest of the viewers. God bless you.
Thank
And
you.
I trust to have you again next time and have fun. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to Perspective. It's always awesome for us to have a thought leader join us, especially share their books with us. So I trust that you're able to pick up something that's very useful to you. And for me personally, I love what Megan said about being compassionate with each other and learning how to ask for help, as I myself had to learn how to do it. And I'm very grateful that I did, because I feel so much healthier when I began doing it. Especially in New Thought and metaphysical circles, we always talk about the power and presence of God within, but you can always ask the power and presence of God within you to direct you to the right person who can help you about your situation. So remember, put things in perspective, because your perspective shapes your reality. Satnam, everyone, and have fun.